welcome to our Fetter YouTube channel. That is Oliver Fetter. I always say it too fast. Today, let's talk about horsepower numbers real quick. And this video is intended to be a discussion, so please drop comments, leave opinions. I want to know. This is my VW 1.6 liter. So it has 1.6 liters worth of swept volume. Let's just start there. And right now, we have pretty much full custom intake and output in the sense that exhaust manifolds, intake piping. I'm running a big turbo on it, GT22V, 2.5 inch hood stack. I mean, there's no back pressure, and context is my previous build iteration with a Giles pump made 80 horsepower. I dynoed it on a Mustang dyno and got 80 horsepower, and I drag raced it, and based on my weight and the ET and things like that, kill confirmed 80 horsepower. It ran like a 16.9 at sea level, and the car weighed like 1,800 pounds. Similar setup, but crappier intake manifold, crappier exhaust manifold, etc. I made 80 horsepower, which for this engine, and that's to the wheels, so 80 horsepower to the wheels in this car, and with a 1.6 liter. At the time I was very distraught because I thought I'd be making 100 horsepower, but now based on where I'm at looking backwards, I'm like, of course I made 80 horsepower. I mean, you're looking at like the size of the intake plenum holes and they're like that big, you know? How is that ever gonna make more than 80? I want to push back in general on inflated horsepower numbers with this motor. 150 horsepower, which is a number I've kicked around and aspired to, and I think other people tend to just throw around lightly, is a pretty serious fucking number to hit with a 1.6 liters. Okay, so I want to look at horsepower numbers and why 150 as a target for this is kind of a realistic limit in two ways. First way, I want to compare two other engines and their displacements, just for context. And part two, I want to talk about exhaust gas temperatures. So part one, my E350 Ford van, which has a 5.4 liter V8, so that's 3.37 times bigger than this engine, only makes 255 horsepower. So if we do 255 divided by 150, so you're telling me a motor that's 3 times as big makes only 1.7 times our goal of this one? Conversely, the 2.7 liter inline 6 turbodiesel that powers most Dodge and Mercedes Sprinter vans up until 2008, that is an excellent motor. That's what this freaking turbo came off of. Makes 154 horsepower. That is 2.7 liters, which, if we do some quick math, I'm not good at math, so we use a calculator. That's 1.6 times as large as this engine. If you're saying you can make 150 horsepower, you're telling me that a 1.6 liter can put out 1.68 times its usual horsepower. That's a lot. That's like putting 1.6 liters on par with a 2.7 liter 6-cylinder turbo diesel that goes in a work van. You know, I think horsepower numbers are pretty inflated these days. Not in a sense that I'm saying people don't make 3,000 horsepower on their Cummins, but in the sense that I'm saying people think that 150 horsepower isn't a lot. And that's not true. 150 horsepower fucking boogies. I drove my friend's Sprinter van, boogies. This thing, if it made 150 horsepower, boogies. So to look at 80 horsepower and hand wave at it and say that was junk, no, it was just a step along the way, for sure. Alright, part two, I am pushing back against people in the community that say they make 120 horsepower or 150. I don't care. Those random numbers thrown out there by VWers, I'm calling them out. I'm calling you out. You. No, I'm not actually. I'm just pushing back on it. So right now, I think this is over 100 horsepower, probably. We have a pretty big turbo. I mean, our turbo is spooling and boosting hard. I just made 30 psi, and it came off of a 2.7 liter Sprinter that makes 155. So if I'm getting this turbo to yas hard on this engine, then it's probably we're getting close to power output of a Mercedes, which is 150. That's all pretty backwards. The exhaust gas temps I'm seeing on this right now are crazy. If I put my foot on the floor, It starts around, I don't know, like cooled off is like 900 to 1,000 when I'm cruising. And then when I put my foot into it, it pegs to like 1,600 plus, like no problem. I have to like let off pretty fast. Which makes me wonder if the last turbo fried itself on exhaust gas temps because my gauge was broken and I kept my foot on the floor for an entire quarter mile. Things probably got too hot, realistically. So the more I've worked on cars, and especially this one where it's turbocharged, the more I've been realizing now that I've been doing it for a long time that from a wider perspective, you're not just strapping parts and like whatever to it. What's really happening is you're making a more efficient flowing motor. That is like the real criteria for making horsepower, is you need a lot of fuel and you need a lot of air. A lot of fuel means you screw with your fuel pump, and a lot of air means you work on everything else, like literally everything else. And so if your motor can flow 150 horsepower worth of air, then all you gotta do is add 150 horsepower worth of fuel, and you have 150 horsepower. Now, that's all pretty straightforward and clean cut, and I think readily achievable. I think we got the airflow, and I think we can add enough fuel. The other thing that comes out of that, and that is the now new restricting factor I've realized, is exhaust gas temperatures. If you're adding all this air and fuel in this chamber and exploding it, and it's this small, you end up with a ton of heat. I mean, you're doing way more combustion than was designed to happen in here in the same space in order to make more horsepower, which is fine other than it gets really freaking hot. My exhaust gas temps are easily over 1,600 degrees if I kept the pedal on the floor, which since I got a new gauge I have not, but when I was drag racing last week I definitely did, and I seriously wonder how hot it got. Probably really hot. If you're claiming your car makes 150 or 120 horsepower even on this engine, what are you doing for your exhaust gas temperatures? Because I'm seeing, in order just to do like a hot pull on the highway in 5th gear, like I'm already pegging 1,600 degrees. And if you stay at that for prolonged times, you're going to start melting stuff. Probably turbos, maybe pistons, I don't really know. But that's my question to you, is what are you doing to keep track of your exhaust gas temps? And in fact, if you're claiming to make 120 or 150 horsepower on this engine and you aren't seeing ridiculously hot exhaust temps, you aren't making 150 horsepower. If your EGTs look good, you are not over 100 probably. You are probably chilling somewhere under 100, because even then it still gets hot. Because we're doing like triple the combustion in this engine in order to make it that fast. So that's my pushback, is that to make big horsepower, you need big flow. To do big flow, you need big fuel. When you have big fuel and big flow and you're making big horsepower, you make a ton of heat. And if you're making a ton of heat, chances are it's not that sustainable. So, I don't buy it, is the bottom line. If you're out there and you like these videos and you like 1.6s and you really want to know what your motor can do, I encourage you to induce some critical thinking in the commenting. Like, how are we going to get this little thing faster? That's what I want to know. That's what I'm really getting at. And I guess I get pissed off when I see people that just throw numbers around, because you're not thinking. You know, where are your EGTs at? You're not thinking. I don't know. Like, how could you possibly be doing that? Let me know. Post a comment. Let me know how you feel. This is how I feel. It might change. Honestly, in a week, this video could be obsolete. But today, it's what I'm thinking about. And I'm letting you know. So you should also leave a comment. Thank you for watching. This is Olly Rants. Olly Rants Sunday. This is the Sunday Oliver Rants edition about 1.6 liters and horsepower numbers. You need big flow and a lot of fuel, and you're going to have high exhaust gas temps. If you make a lot of power, let me know. Also, if anybody watching this has a good drop link beta experience with any kind of meth injection, I think that's what I need next. Appreciate you. Thank you for watching.